Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to another new episode of What If Naruto Was a Shinigami. While in the Forest of Death Orochimaru seals away the Kyuubi. This however will lead a new power awakening within the Kyuubi container. If you guys enjoy this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel after watching this video. Don't forget to shower some appreciation onto the incredible author responsible for this fanfiction. The link is conveniently waiting for you in the description down below. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So now let's start this video. It was a beautiful day in Konoha, the sun was shining, the birds were singing, and Hyuga Hinata was beating the shit out of a training log. She had changed in the last 2.5 years. Her dark blue hair was now longer and hung down her back. She had developed curves in all the right places, and had grown a nice pair of breasts. In all she had changed from a cute little girl to a beautiful young woman. Panting heavily and whipping the sweat from her forehead, she sat against the log and sighed. In the last few years things have been going to plan. Somewhat. The only things different were Naruto's absence. She and Neji are already getting along, and most importantly she's still a genin. She sighed. That had been a conscious decision on her part. Both she and Tenten had absolutely refused to take the exams again until Naruto returned. Of course they'd never told anyone that, but Tsunade telling everyone else they were just waiting for a challenge. If Hinata were still wearing her mask as tight as she used to, everyone probably would have seen right through that though. In the eyes of most of those around her she had seemingly come out of her shell. She no longer stuttered or made any of her nervous gestures, except on certain occasions. She had also stopped holding back in her sparring as much against her sister. In the eyes of the clan she had surpassed Hanabi and was nearing Neji's level. She mentally scoffed at that as she was already on that level. To her however Jaikin was just far too stiff. Sure it had its speed and precision, but it was also rigid, a sign that it was created by a man. This was the reason she had started developing her own style of Jaikin, one that made use of the natural flexibility of a woman. Without this she knew she would never reach her father's level. Most had credited a rise in strength to Naruto's death. Many of her friends believed that the death of the person she held most precious had caused her to release everything that she had been holding back. Whenever this was brought up however both Shikamaru and Tenten would stay quiet, as they both knew the blonde was still alive. When word of Naruto's death had come out the villagers immediately started trying to celebrate, trying being the key word. You see, every time they had tried it had been in the presence of one or more of his friends or worse, Tsunade herself. Whenever these things happened the shinobi in the area turned a blind eye, as they had grown to respect the blonde after his battle against Shikaku. The worst however was when she'd been walking with Neji and her father towards the tower. Flashback. They had just passed Ichiraku's when they overheard two of the villagers talking about what it would have been like if the demon had had children and what they'd have done to them. She had acted on pure instinct, having planned to be the mother of the blonde's children. Both Neji and Hiashi watched in shock as her Byakugan flared to life, and blades of chakra launched out of her palms and into all of the Tenketsu into both of their lower bodies. If that wasn't bad enough she had done it so they would never walk again or have children, and author winces. Needless to say no one ever spoke negatively about the blonde in her presence. Flashback ends. It wasn't until after she had regained her breath that she had realized what she had done. Her pale eyes had gone white as she rounded on the still shocked Neji and Hiashi. Hiashi had immediately broken the move down from what he had seen, and knew that he had only seen half of what it was capable of. Even still that one attack had more strength than even Hakirakujin Sho. This is because the Hakirakujin Sho only closes the Tenketsu for a certain amount of time. With his Byakugan he saw Hinata didn't do that, no she had destroyed every Tenketsu she hit. Those men would never walk again among other things. He inwardly shuddered. He'd rather die by use of the caged bird seal than face their fate. It was with this thought that he turned his most precious possession away from his daughter. Things had not been quite the same after that. Hanabi had been livid finding out Hinata had been holding back on her. The elders had also been surprised after they had been informed as Hinata was supposed to be the weakling. They had grilled her on the move with their Byakugans active to be completely sure she didn't lie. When asked why she never used the move before she simply stated that it still wasn't finished as it easily tires her out. In the end it had been labeled as an A-rank technique. The kicker though was when she had explained why most of the Hyuga couldn't use it, as they weren't flexible enough, as such it had been dubbed as a woman's technique. They had asked her to start teaching it once it was finished. As a result she had started taking more missions just so she could get out of it. She was not sharing her techniques until her style was finished. Shaking herself from her thoughts, she stood up before heading for a shower. She had a meeting with Tsunade in 2 hours, and something told her she wasn't going to like it. Yamanaka Flower Shop. Yamanaka Ino was many things: abrasive, loud and demanding, being 3 of them. Right now, however, she was absolutely bored. She also changed into a beautiful young woman. No longer did she wear her old purple dress, now she wore a purple skirt over black biker shorts. Her shirt was also purple and stopped at the top of her stomach. On her elbows and knees she wore bracers made out of fishnet. Finally, she wore black shinobi sandals, and had her long pale blonde hair in a ponytail that stopped at the small of her back. Like most of the Konoha 11, which they still called themselves in honor of Naruto, she had taken news of his death hard. She had locked herself up and broken down and cried for a week. Then she broke down again, only this time in front of everyone else, bawling about how she never got to tell him the truth. Then her sadness turned to anger, extreme anger at the villagers. Not only did they blame the Uchiha's defection and mission's failure on Naruto, but they had the nerve to celebrate his death. She had snapped then and had done something that she had told herself she would never do. She had used it. She had used her family's techniques to seriously mindfuck them. She had tortured them in their own minds for 10 minutes before she was stopped. The one who had stopped her had been none other than Morino Ibiki. He didn't reprimand the blonde though, instead he had taken the 3 men to his office for a little chat. He would later return to take the angry blonde as an apprentice, introducing her to the world of interrogation. Sighing, she shook herself from her thoughts before glancing at the time. She was due at the tower in 30 minutes. Rising to her feet and yelling to her mother, she was leaving the blonde Chunin left, walking towards the tower. Hokage Tower. Tsunade stared down on the village with a frown on her face. In 2.5 years the village hadn't really changed, not like she expected it to. Behind her, one of her Kage Bunshins was tending to a mountain of paperwork, an idea she had gotten from Naruto. Taunton, who she had in her arms, squeaked, breaking the busty Hokage from her thoughts. Turning over, she dismissed the clone before sitting in her seat. Just as she did, there was a knock at the door, which after her approval proceeded to open. Once it did, 14 people walked in, all being members of the Konoha 11 or their senseis, even Kakashi, who she had told to come 3 hours before the time she wanted. And they all looked just like they do in the manga anime after the time skip. "I'm glad you guys could make it. I have some things to tell you all." Once she said that, everyone looked over at her. Seeing this, she simply said 3 words. "Naruto's coming home." The reaction of the group was priceless. With the exception of Shikamaru, Hinata and Tenten, everyone gasped before going wide-eyed. Tsunade Sama: "Naruto can't come back. He's..." started Sakura, only to be cut off by Shikamaru. "Naruto never died." This caused just about everyone to turn in his direction. Seeing this, he mumbled a quick troublesome before he explained. Naruto had made a complete recovery the same night he was healed. He started slowly. That same night, his uncle Kachiki Byakuya extended him an invitation to his home to train. He accepted and left the same night. He finished with a sigh. "But Tsunade-sama, you said that Naruto-kun..." started Ino, only to be interrupted by Tsunade. "I know, suffered from chakra poisoning. Here's something only a few of you know. Naruto was being hunted by S-class missing nins." This produced a gasp from all of them, minus the senseis Hinata and Tenten. "It was for this reason news of his death was allowed to be leaked out," said Tenten, shocking many. "Anyway, I wanted to let you know he'll be arriving sometime this week." She finished, getting wide eyes from everyone. North Gate. Serche. Yamamoto sighed as he sat behind his desk. Why did Naruto have to leave when he did? They could have certainly used his help with this rancor problem. Naruto was one of the best the Gate 13 had to offer. He had been labeled as a prodigy after his 3-month training was over. While some had been doubtful, he had quickly earned their respect when he was assigned his temporary division. He had placed the blonde in the 13th division, due to recommendation from his teachers. This is because all divisions had something they specialize in. The most well-known were the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th divisions. The 2nd division specialized in covert operations. The 3rd was mainly a fighting division that used only their Zanpakuto and Hado. The 4th division was with the composite relief for the medics. 5th division specialized in the use of any kind of Kido. 6th division specialized in assassination. 9th division specialized in communication technology. 10th division was the researching department. 11th division was simply those who only fought with their Zanpakuto. 12th division specialized in technology development. Finally, 13th division, they were the sole trafficking management and research department. They were the ones that were constantly in human world. They were also known to be able to find anything. On top of that, they were now one of the strongest divisions, Naruto being one of the key reasons. The boy had seemingly brought the division back from the bleak place they were at after Shibukyun's death. He never gave up, and when he didn't have a mission he was training. In fact, he had grown so much he had gained his own nickname. But what got the most attention was that he had been a member of the 13th Division for over a year, and had never released his Shikai. Sure, he had the ability to, but he just didn't need to. In fact, only 2 people other than Naruto had seen his Shikai, they being Urahara and Uruchi, and both were tight-lipped. With a sigh, he shook himself from his thoughts before turning back to the problem at hand. Who was he going to send to help Kurosaki's group deal with the rancor threat? 3 days later, Konoha. 3 figures could be seen standing atop the Hokage monument. On the right side was a man with long spiky white hair wearing forest green pants and a grey shirt with a red vest over it. This image alone immediately told many this was the Toad-san in Jiraiya. To the left was a woman not seen in Konoha in 15 years. She had long silky red hair with a baby blue hairpiece in it. She wore grey pants and a grey shirt over this. She wore an open black trench coat. At her side a sheathed sword could be seen. Then there was the person in the middle. He was tall, just about shoulder height to Jiraiya, which was saying something. He had spiky blonde hair that stopped just past his shoulder blades. His blonde locks hung over his face, casting shadows over his eyes. He wore black shinobi sandals and blue pants that were taped at the bottom. He also wore a blue shirt under a sleeveless white trench coat, with the word 13 on the back running along the bottom in black. Over this was the kanji for God of Flash, also in black. Finally, he had a hidite with the leaf insignia on it tied to his arm. Out of the 3, 2 of them had a calm aura around them. The other had an aura that screamed perverseness. The blonde stood with both hands in his pocket, gazing over the village without any once of emotion showing on his face. After a few more minutes, Jiraiya spoke up, breaking the silence. "You ready, Gaki?" "Ah," was the distracted response from the blonde. With that, the 3 each disappeared. Hokage Tower. Tsunade was not having a good day. First, she hadn't slept well the previous night, as a very sick dream had kept her up. Then she had found out the Kazukage, Gar, had been snatched up by the Akatsuki, and his brother had been severely poisoned. It was for this reason that she'd sent Kakashi, Sakura and Ino to Suna. After that guy had come in and she had to endure yet another one of his crazy youth rants. After finally getting Guy and Mini Guy to shut up, she had sent them to assist Kakashi's team, having gotten word of them heading after Gar. What Sakura sees in Lee she would probably never know. Anyway, once she had finished with them, 2 Chunin had brought in 2 more stacks of paperwork. Then those old fossils Hamura and Kaher had come once again, trying to suck up to her. She had quickly stopped that and promptly told them either leave or get on their knees and start licking. She'd gone a long time without being properly fucked. The least they could do is put their mouths to good use. Shaking the disgusting thoughts from her head, she looked back to the pile in front of her. Bringing her hands into her new favorite seal, she was once again stopped as the door opened up. Looking up and glaring, she was surprised to see the grinning face of her former teammate and fellow Sanin. Looking over to the other 2, she let out a gasp. Though she didn't recognize the woman, the young man surprised her. The boy definitely looked like a cross between his father and great-grandfather. His hair was a mixture between the Nidayame's and Arashi's, as it was spiky like Nidayame's, though he had the bangs on the side like his father. Like his father, he wore a white trench coat, but like Nidayame, he wore all blue and black everywhere else. Snapping out of her shock, she wasted no time snatching the boy up into a tight hug. Naruto, however, would describe it more like a death grip. Finally, after much struggle to breath, he was able to speak up. "Oba-chan. Back." Breaking, said the blonde, pausing after each word at the pain. Tsunade, hearing this, immediately let go, causing him to fall to the ground wheezing. Tsunade took this time to look over the 2. It was then that she realized who the woman was and hugged her as well, though not as hard as she had Naruto. "It's good to see you again too, Tsunade," said Kushina with a smile. "It's been far too long," said Tsunade. After catching up for a bit, Tsunade, who was now back in her seat, brought up the fact Naruto was still only a genin. "Luckily the Chunin exam is coming up, so that could change," said Tsunade. "But I would need a team," said Naruto with a thoughtful look on his face. "You already have one," replied the Sanin, getting raised eyebrows from the group. "Hinata and Tenten refused to take the exams again without you," she explained. Naruto nodded, as something like that would make sense. After a while more of talking, the group left, heading towards the Hokage estates. Elsewhere, Kakashi jumped to the side, avoiding yet another of his opponent's explosive clay birds. Seeing 3 more coming in low, he jumped up, flipping upside down and flinging 3 kunai at them, hitting each between the eyes, causing them to explode. Deidara glared, seeing this, before sending out 6 clay bats. Kakashi however had already finished his seals and blew out a giant ball of fire while thinking Kaiten. Kakaku no Jutsu. Deidara slid to the side dodging it while absent-mindedly wondering how the copy nin had done that without lowering his mask. Digging his hands in his pouch, he released a few more clay birds, while discreetly sending out some clay spiders. Art is a bang, ya thought the blonde Nukenin. Kakashi sighed seeing the birds coming hoping Sakura and Chiyo were faring better than he was. He was also wondering where the hell Ino was. With Sakura and Chiyo. Sakura was not having a good day. First she and Ino had found out it was Chiyo that sealed Shikaku within Gar, something Ino chewed her out viciously for. Then they had been forced to face Suna's strongest puppeteer in history, Akasuna no Sasori of the Red Sands. After that Chiyo and Sasori had engaged in a puppet fight only for Chiyo's puppets to be destroyed. Now she was being used as a puppet herself to destroy Sasori's puppets. She was snapped out of her thoughts as she was pulled away from the blade of one of Sasori's puppets. With a sigh the pink-haired girl realized it was going to be a long day. With Team Guy. They were also having their share of bad luck. They however had ended up facing the blue-skinned monster known as Kasame. Unfortunately Kasame had managed to catch both Tenten and Guy in a water prisons. This left Neji and Lee to fight Kasame's clone. The problem was getting around that sword of his, as each time they got close they were knocked back. Kasame, seemingly tired of playing around, quickly went through a long chain of seals before calling out Suiten. Suryuta no Jutsu. Pumping a large amount of chakra into the technique he created a large water dragon. The dragon circled around its creator before launching itself at Lee and Eiji with a loud roar. Nodding at one another both Lee and Eiji dodged to the side before charging at the fishman. Kasame seeing this simply made the dragon turn back after them. With twin smirks the Konohenen initiated their plan. At the last second they turned to the side of the clone, with Lee disappearing in a blur. The green beast reappeared under Kasame giving him a kick to the chin sending him flying, as well as making his hold on the prisons disperse. Lee however was far from done. Reappearing in under Kasame with his hand in his back the boy's bandages came undone before wrapping around the fishman. Once that was done the boy turned the momentum to have them going towards the ground while spinning at a fast rate. Once they neared the ground Lee released letting Kasame fall with a cry of Emoto Renge. There was an explosion as Kasame hit the ground creating a crater. Kasame however wasn't an S-class nin for nothing, and managed to stagger to his feet. It was then that his eyes went wide hearing a voice behind him. "You're within range of my haki. Haki Rakuju Yonsho." With that said Neji dashed forward his hands moving in blurs as he struck the shark-like man's Tenketsus. Hitting the last one he gave him a palm strike to the back just for good measure sending him flying. He wasn't flying for long as he soon got a kick to the face from the freed guy that sent him into a tree. Tenten took the opportunity and sent a windmill shuriken at the downed Akatsuki nin, hitting him right in the neck. Once that happened his body and head, which was now separated, fell to the ground with a dull thud. Not long after that his body was enveloped in a puff of smoke which cleared showing a now headless Sunanin. Elsewhere. Kasame sat up with a jolt his right hand instinctively going up to his neck. "What happened?" questioned Itachi in his annoyingly emotionless voice. "They beat the clone even at 30%, stated Kasame in his gruff voice. "Let's go, we're done here," said the Uchiha before he turned and left with Kasame following. With Kakashi. Kakashi dodged to the side of yet another piece of explosive clay before jumping back dodging yet another. Sharingan spinning the Jonin ran through a chain of seals before slapping his hands to the ground with a mutter of Doten. Doryudango. As soon as he said that a dragon of earth rose from the ground shooting balls of mud at the Akatsuki nin. Deidara dodged all of the balls with ease however, before he could do anything else he found himself frozen. Ino, who had been hiding among the rocks around them, had taken the moment to use one of her family jutsus. Usually the Shinranshin no Jutsu, mind-body disturbance technique, allowed the user to control the target, but because of the power difference between them, she could barely hold him still. Kakashi-sensei hurry up, called Ino. Kakashi hearing this wasted no time going for the kill. His Sharingan spun before changing shape into a pinwheel-type shape. Focusing chakra into the eye and using one of his Sharingan's abilities, he sent Deidara's body to a completely different dimension, the only things staying being his head and right arm. Seeing this, the copy nin let out a sigh before he fell to the ground in exhaustion. With Sakura. Sakura panted in exhaustion as she stared down at Sasori. After much hard work she and Chiyo had been able to destroy Sasori's primary puppet, which he just happened to use as his body. This however didn't happen until she had smashed up Sasori's favorite puppet, which was the actual Sandai Kazakage him he turned into a puppet. What she now faced was Sasori's true body of a young red-haired boy. According to Chiyo, he looked exactly as he had before he left Suna about 20 years ago. This had led Chiyo to come to one conclusion. Sasori had turned himself into a puppet. She was snapped out of her thoughts when Sasori charged at her at incredible speeds. Chiyo, seeing this, pulled the girl back, allowing her to dodge the attack if just barely. Sasori, however, was far from done as his forearm quickly flipped over, revealing a blade. Charging once again, his attack was blocked this time by a puppet in the form of his father. Chiyo, seeing this, moved her left hand, sending the puppet body of Sasori's mother at him. Sasori smirked as he dodged it and charged forward towards Sakura once more. Sakura, seeing him coming, reacted quickly. Channeling chakra, she punched the ground hard, creating a crater in front of her. Sasori jumped to the side, dodging the crater and heading towards Chiyo. The old woman had already finished her seals though, and in a puff of smoke, 10 more puppets appeared in front of her. Sasori narrowed his eyes before summoning his own army of 100 puppets. What followed was the greatest battle between puppet users in history. And sorry, I just can't seem to write a puppet fight for anything. Maybe I'll get it one day though. After a while, Sakura had gotten an idea and taken an orb from one of Chiyo's down puppets. The orbs worked by sealing away the chakra of whomever they hit, which gave her an idea. Taking the orb, she watched as they battled, waiting for a chance to strike. Finally, she saw it as Sasori jumped into the air. Now it was her thought before throwing the orb right where his heart should be. Sasori saw it coming though, and managed to turn in the air, so it hit him in his back. Once it did, he fell to the ground, not moving, causing the pink-haired girl to sigh in relief. That relief didn't last, however, as Sasori got up and charged at Chiyo, his bladed arm going for the kill. He was surprised though when he found Sakura in front of the old woman, the blade stuck into her shoulder. That hurt, Shanro screamed, inner Sakura speaking up for the first time in a long time. It was with this that Sakura's right fist collided with the puppet boy's face, caving the jaw in, and sending him into the awaiting arms of the forgotten mother puppet. As soon as he was, a panel slid down, his blade shot out, impaling straight through. Konoha Council Chambers. In 3 years, the Konoha Council had changed dramatically. No longer were civilians allowed on it, nor did they have as much power as before. Tsunade had instead made the council into just the shinobi clan heads, the elders, and herself. So when they saw the former civilian council members, they were surprised and a few showed it. The noise in the room died down though when Tsunade entered the room, followed closely by another black-haired woman. Looking at them all, the woman spoke up in an emotionless voice and scaring all in the room. Let the punishment begin. Naruto sighed as he stared up at the sky from his position in the training grounds. 3 days had passed since his return, though he stayed at the mansion so as not to be seen. Tenten had returned yesterday, though she had been so tired she'd fallen asleep while hugging him. Today, however, he planned on catching up with his friends, after training of course. It was still extremely early, so much so that even the shinobi were not up yet. This was perfect for him as it allowed him to work on his skills in secret. Over the years he had developed his bloodline remarkably to the point where he could gather water molecules from the very air. He once again thanked the fact that he had learned Kage Bunshin that night. His control over the wind element had also greatly increased thanks in no small part to his father's training guide. Lately, however, he had been working on something in secret. He had found out during his first trip to Soul Society that the Rasengan was an incomplete jutsu, as such he's been trying to complete it, that he realized wouldn't happen for a while yet. As such, he was working on drawing the water, as well as converting it to ice faster. Okay, so his clones were working on it, but in the end it's the same result. Taking a meditative position, he sighed before diving into his mind. Makai. She was late, that fact alone had her moving faster. Like lightning she moved, gathering her essentials for the trip. Stopping in front of the mirror, she sighed before once more taking her human form, watching as her tails disappeared, and her beautiful fox ears changed to those of a human. With one more glance around the room and finding she wasn't missing anything, she disappeared in a blaze of fire. Karakar. Ichigo sat deep in thought. In front of him, Issen sat with a frown on his face. Ichigo had just informed his father of his encounter against the hollows known as a rancor. Needless to say, he had not been happy about his son's defeat, but then again the boy only knew how to wield his Zanpakuto. I think it's time you learned some Kido, said Issen before standing and walking off with Ichigo following. Serte. A single figure could be seen training in the 4th Division's domain. Her long black hair flowed down her back as she moved gracefully in her kata, her Zanpakuto moving as a blur. As she moved, the air around her condensed as some turned to water. Tucking low, she spun before the water froze into the shape of senbon and shot out in all directions. Haku-chan called a voice causing her to turn in its direction. Anohana Taicho, how can I help you? Asked the girl panting. I've elected you to represent our division in this year's tournament, said Anohana, getting a shocked look from the girl, as the 4th division never entered the tournament. I've just gotten word Mamachi Zabuza will be representing the 11th division, said the captain, getting a small smile from the girl. I'll let you know when I hear who will represent the 13th division, she said, getting a nod from the girl before turning away. I wonder who else is competing. Whoever they are better be strong, thought the 4th division's prodigy before continuing her training. Konoha. We now find the blonde Shinigami along with Tenten and Hinata walking through the village. Naruto, seeing the shocked look, sent his way smirked, exposing his longer than average canines. They had just come from an enjoyable lunch at Ichiraku's, a place Naruto had missed greatly. They had already had the discussion about the exams, and had agreed to competing, something Tenten had been dying to do again. Temari had gotten too far ahead of her. Turning a corner, they ran into Temari and Shikamaru, who happened to be walking together. The two groups stopped for a second before the two boys nodded at each other. It's about time you got back, you troublesome blonde. Hey, I'd have been back sooner, but I had a lot to do, responded Naruto with a smile. So I take it you three will finally take the exams again, said Temari. Of course, what did you think we were waiting for, said Tenten, getting one from Temari. Good, it would look bad if people found out my rival was still a genin. I mean, I'm a jonin for Kami's sake, said Temari in exasperation. Anyway, I'm helping out with the exams this time, so I'll get everything sorted out for you three, even though it's troublesome. It starts tomorrow, just so you know, said Shika, getting a nod from the group. With that, he and Temari continued walking along their own way. Hokage Tower. Tsunade sighed as she finished reading the report of Gaara's rescue. What got her attention the most was Sakura's prize for defeating Sasori. Sasori had given her information regarding a meeting with a spy he had in Odo. This gave her 10 days to prepare a team for the meeting. The question was, who would she choose? Hyuga State. As a veteran of the last Shinobi War, Hyuga Hiashi had seen a lot in his life. As such, there was little that he actually feared. He could now say that Kichiki Kushina was someone to be feared. Just the memory of what had happened in the council chambers caused him to shudder and whimper, inwardly of course. Flashback no jutsu. Let the punishment begin. You have been found guilty for crimes against not only the Kichiki but Soul Society as a whole. Your punishment is death. With that said, she disappeared, reappearing with her Zanpakuto stabbed into the chest of one man. Most people seeing this tried to run, only for someone to have a hole blasted through their legs by what looked like lightning shot out from the Kichiki's fingertips. Pato number 4 White Lightning, said Kushina coldly, her right arm still outstretched with her index and middle fingers pointed outward. Then she seemingly disappeared before reappearing in front of the door, as a massive spurt of blood filled the room. Body parts fell as she swung her Zanpakuto through the air, cleaning the blood off of it. Once that was done, she sheathed her Zanpakuto before turning to face the last of her targets, those being the 3 elders and a pink-haired woman. None of you shall get the pleasure of a quick death, said Kushina coldly. Flashback no jutsu. Kai. After that, Kushina had taken them all and just disappeared, leaving no clue to her presence, except for the blood covering the room. He shuddered inwardly. He hadn't seen something that vicious since Minato's attack on the Iwanins after Obito's death. With Naruto, we currently find our favorite blonde shinobi at Ichiraku's. Around him sat all of his friends, from Konoha at least. They started from Tenten on his left, then Ino, Choji, Shikamaru, and Temari. To his right were Hinata, Konohamaru, Neji, Kiba, Shino, and Lee. So let me get this straight, said Naruto in between laughter. You, he said, pointing at Konohamaru, got into a fight with her sister, pointing to Hinata. During class, because she was being all high mighty Hyuga and knocked her out with a version of Auric no Jutsu that uses guys, he said before bowing over in laughter. Why didn't I ever think of that? It could have seriously gotten the damn fangirls with it. He said, laughing so hard that he missed the blushes on the girls' faces. The next day found Naruto, Hinata, and Tenten at the academy. Walking through the halls and right past the genjutsu that seemed to always get the first-timers, they made their way to room 301. Walking through the doors, none of them paid any mind to the glares and killing intent that hit them, simply shrugging it off and standing by a wall. Naruto did notice, however, that he was receiving hard looks from the Iwanin in the room. After a few minutes, he got fed up and let out a bit of his spirit pressure. The results of this were the Iwanin each going stiff and struggling to even breathe. Then, just as quickly as it had come, he let it go, still looking away. During his time in Sirte, Naruto had met and fought with many people. A few of these people had played a role in his development as a Shinigami. One such person was Saraki Kenpachi, captain of the 11th division. The man had an astounding level of Ryatsu, and his spear pressure alone was enough to send people to their knees, even when he held it back. This was something Naruto had picked up, which he used mostly for intimidation purposes. The person who did the most influence, however, had been his own Captain Yukitake. The man had not only gained his trust but his loyalty. He had immediately seen through the cold mask that the blonde had put up and urged him to be himself. The sickly man had concentrated more on his development as a person than as a Shinigami. This in effect had turned him from an angry teen that only cared for himself and few others, to one of the most respectful young men in all of Seoul society. Unfortunately, this also resulted in a fan club so large it made the Sasuke fan club pale in comparison. He was broken from his thoughts as he felt several presences drawing near before a massive cloud of smoke covered the front of the room. When it cleared, he was greeted by the sight of Marino Ibiki standing in front of the room, exactly as the blonde remembered him, along with several chunin including Shikamaru. "Alright maggots, listen up," yelled the jonin, silencing the room. "I am your proctor for the first exam, Marino Ibiki. Each team will receive a number and send a representative into the next room for the exam. If that representative fails, the entire team does, understood? Those who pass are to wait in room 328 for the next exam." Once this was said, everyone grabbed a number before walking and taking seats around the room with their teams. 40 minutes later, Naruto's number was called and he silently walked into the room. Entering the room, he saw the shocked looks on some of the chunins, as well as hearing the mutters of Yondaime. Name spoke Ibiki. Kichiki Naruto. Hearing this put them right back in shock. Most of the people had thought the blonde had died. However, seeing the boy alive and well and looking like an almost mirror image of the Yondaime with a touch of Nidaime, had several people wondering just who he was. "Change your name, I see," said Ibiki. "I'm using my real one, have been for years," replied the blonde, getting a nod from the interrogator. "Right, well, for this exam you have to knock out each of the chunin in the room," said Ibiki. Naruto looked around them and seeing something started to grin mischievously. Seeing this, several members of the Naruto task force, a group Sandaime created to deal with the pranking Naruto, shuddered in fear. Bringing his hands into the familiar cross-shaped seal, he created one Kage Bunshin. Several people raised eyebrows at this before both Narutos grinned evilly. Running through a few more seals, both Narutos called out work. Ananoko Dashi no Jutsu, sexy. Double knockout girls technique. Once he said that, both Narutos were engulfed in clouds of smoke. When it cleared, the forms of two extremely beautiful women could be seen hugging each other. One of them had long silky black hair and beautiful red eyes, while the other had short purple hair and brown eyes. Both of these women were completely naked with their breasts pressed up against each other. Then as one, the two turned and winked at the chunin. Not 2 seconds after, each of the chunin as well as Ibiki were launched back by huge nosebleeds slamming against the wall behind them. Ibiki, however, proved to be a special jonin for a reason, as he lifted his head before speaking. Using Kurine and Anko. What a truly devastating technique. Your team passes. With that said, the special jonin passed out. Konohamaru, you are a genius, thought the blonde as he casually walked out the room with a smirk, after taking some pictures of course, and leaving a note in Ibiki's pocket. Walking out the room with his hands in his pocket, he simply nodded as Hinata and Tenten followed him out. 2 hours later, Guy ran into the room. Looking up, the taijutsu master counted 56 teams before speaking. "Yosh, everyone here burns with the flames of youth as you all pass the first exam. However, as brightly as your youthful flames burn, I'll cut this group down in half, and if not, I'll run around the village 1,000 times on my hands. You have 45 minutes to be at training area 44. Now go, the springtime of youth waits for no one," and with that the green-clad jonin disappeared in a blur of green out the door. "I see he hasn't changed," said Naruto, shaking his head. Tenten sighed, muttering to herself about idiotic jonin instructors. "Well, at least Lee calmed down some," said Naruto. "Yeah, only because Sakura told him she wouldn't go out with him if he didn't," said Tenten, while Hinata nodded her agreement. With that said, they got up, headed towards the forest. As they walked, all three noticed someone was following them, but paid it little mind. It was then that several strange black creatures emerged from the trees down to the group. Before they could even make it halfway, however, they were struck down by a hail of kunai and shuriken. Just after this, several more of the strange creatures emerged and were quickly destroyed by Hinata and Tenten. The person watching them was about to summon more when he noticed the blonde had disappeared. Just then Naruto appeared behind him, kunai poised against the man's throat. "And it's I, people. To attack us together, you are either very brave or very stupid," said the young Kachiki. "You good, maybe you will do," said the boy before he dissolved into ink by the smell of it. Naruto, seeing this, jumped out from his perch in the trees. Once he was down, the three friends wasted no time in heading for the forest. Serte. Kushina stood in Yamamoto's office, her face neutral. Behind her stood several souls, all of which who had committed crimes against her son. These people included Danzo, Hamura and Kaher. Each of these people stood shackled around their necks, wrists, and ankles. In front of them stood Yamamoto with Saratobi behind him. Like always, Yamamoto had his staff in hand, while Saratobi had his Zanpakuto strapped to his waist. "You know why you are here," said Yamamoto, causing those gathered to shake their heads. "You are here for crimes against Kuchiki Naruto, which turns to crimes against the Kuchiki family, which turns to crimes against Soul Society," said Yamamoto, confusing some of them. The Kuchiki are one of the four noble families of Soul Society. Each and every member has eventually become a Shinigami, who in turn protects Soul Society. It is for this reason you have been sentenced to serving the Kuchiki clan for the rest of your natural lives. Not only that, but after you die your Ryatsu will be sealed away, and you will serve for an additional 200 years. Once the man finished, the gathered people erupted, cries of outrage filling the room. This, however, was quickly stopped as Yamamoto released a fraction his own spirit pressure. All of them fell to their knees, struggling to even breathe. Seeing his point made, the oldest Shinigami dropped his spirit pressure, allowing them the much needed air. Throughout all of this, both Kushina and Saratobi had stayed completely still, seemingly uncaring of the mortals. It was then that the sound of ringing could be heard as everyone turned their attention to Kushina, who had pulled out her cell phone. Reading the message on it, she sighed in displeasure before speaking. "Sorry sensei, it seems that there was a SWA meeting called that I must attend." "No problem, I'll have them escorted to the Kuchiki estates," responded Yamamoto. Kushina smiled at this before nodding and leaving the room. Karakar. The sound of metal clashing could be heard in the area that connects the Kurosaki clinic to Urahara's shop. Two figures stared each other down, as their blades clashed, trying to overpower the other. Isen watched as his daughters sparred with interest. It seemed they had learned a lot from Naruto in the time he had been here, and had both steadily improved. While Karen had had his help, Yuzu had done it with nothing but scrolls left to her by Naruto, detailing either training exercises, jutsus, and even how to dress and eat. She had taken each of these, committed them to memory, and before he knew, his daughter had the strength of a genin in Konoha. While she trained, Karen and Ichigo had seen her do things that both Karen and Ichigo had thought couldn't be done. This ranged from climbing trees with no hands, walking on the ceiling, and even walking on water. They had even seen her launch several small fireballs from her mouth before. She had also gotten so fast that she had been drafted to her school's track team, and had become one of the stars within the first 2 months. Both Karen and Yuzu could handle shuriken and kunai, as if they had done it all their lives now, though Yuzu had better aim when it came to throwing them. As the house cook, she effectively made sure everyone ate the same as she did. Basically, they all ate healthier food. As a result, the girls had grown sooner than he would have liked in certain places, causing a number of boys to look their way. "Are you sure about this?" asked Ichigo, breaking him from his thoughts. "Hi. With their rancor here and their Ryatsu getting stronger every day, it's the only way to keep them safe," responded the former captain. "Besides, I've been there before, nothing should happen to them," finished this, and more to reassure himself than his son. "Their teachers have been asking me what we've been feeding them," said Ichigo. "What did you say?" asked Isen. "Just that they were eating things better for their health than I did at their age." Both men winced as Karen received a rather strong punch to her jaw, as they had both put up their blades a while ago. "Have you spoken to him?" asked Ichigo. "Hi. He said he would head home early just to greet them. In fact, he should be there now," responded Isen, getting a nod from the orange-haired youth. "Well, let's get this over with," said Isen with a sigh. "Here come the tears," thought Ichigo, walking over to his panting little sisters. Konoha. The Forest of Death, the place that changed his life. The very place where his mask had first cracked before it shattered. The place where the end of Team 7 had started. Naruto found himself confused as to if he should glare at the gates or not, so he settled for his mask of indifference. "Alright, my youthful friends, welcome to the Forest of Death. The next test is a survival exam. The goal is to make it to the tower in the center of the forest. Each team will be given 2 stars. You need to have 5 of them and get into the tower by the end of the 5th day. To get more stars, you can test your flames of youth against other teams or against the youthful chunin that we have stationed inside of the forest. Now everyone sign one of these forms so our youthful village won't be held responsible should some of you meet a most unyouthful death." Naruto had tuned him out as soon as the man started talking about youthful flames, and pulled out a certain orange book, though the cover was black, thanks to a nice genjutsu. Guy seeing spoke up. "Hey, did you hear what I said?" "Ha," said Naruto, looking up from his book. "Did you say something, Guy sensei?" AHHH, you have the same hip attitude as Kakashi, screamed Guy, causing Naruto to sweat drop, also unknowingly dropping the genjutsu on the book cover. Naruto-kun, said Hinata, quietly catching both his and Tenten's attention. Is that Icha? Nurses. Naruto gulped hearing this and hesitantly nodded, knowing how females hated perverts. Hinata proceeded to snatch it from him and then do the unexpected and read it with a blush on her face. Tenten sighed seeing Hinata at it again. The girl had been following the Icha series since she was 9, though Naruto didn't know. Tenten herself had been reading them since she was 10, but at least she only did it at night. After a while they signed their forms and collected their stars, Hinata reading the book the entire time. So how should we do this? Get to the tower today or wait? Asked Naruto as soon as they got to their gate, shocking the Chunin who was with them. Let's do it today. While everyone else is preparing ambushes and such, we can take them out and head to the tower, said Hinata. We'll go after a Chunin, said Tenten, catching their attention. We were given 2 stars like all the Genin, and we need 5, right? Well, it's only logical for the Chunin to have 3 as they can't expect Genin to take on more than 1 Chunin, explained the weapon mistress, getting nods from the 2. After a few minutes of waiting, the exam started as Guy's voice screamed over the speakers. Yosh, the second exam begins now. Go. Once that was said, the gates all swung open as the various Genin charged into the forest. The team consisting of Naruto, Hinata, and Tenten, however, didn't charge in. Instead, Naruto bit his thumb, running the blood across the tattoo on his arm. There was a puff of smoke which cleared, showing several 3-tailed kitsunes including Taka standing before the group. I need you guys to find me the closest Chunin shinobi inside the forest in every direction, said the blonde. The group of foxes, hearing their orders, shot out in every direction of the forest. The Chunin guarding the gate saw this and was extremely surprised. 10 minutes later they returned and told what they knew before disappearing into smoke. I've got an idea, said the blonde shinobi Shinigami, catching their attention. I use shadow clones and send them after 2 Chunin while we go after the closest, effectively knocking out some competition. Both girls nodded hearing this as it meant less trouble. With their plan set, the 3 took to the trees at a fast pace, Naruto creating Kage Bunshins along the way and having 4 henge into his teammates. With that done, the 3 exchanged smiles and disappeared in blurs of speed into the forest. The Chunin guard whistled seeing this, though he wasn't surprised as they were members of the Konoha 11. Karakura. Yuzu sighed as she finished packing her things up. Her eyes were red, and tear streaks still stained her face. The cross from her Karen was no different as she sat on her bed staring unseeingly into space. No matter how she acted, her family was all she had, and now she and Yuzu were being forced to leave all because of some stupid hollows. She and Yuzu had fought plenty of them in the past, though Yuzu couldn't see anything but a slight blur. Even still, they had fought and destroyed a few hollows along with Jinta and Yururu as the Karakura's superheroes. But those had apparently been low-class hollows, a far cry from what Ichigo was currently dealing with, so they were being sent away for their own protection. Well, at least they'd be with someone they knew, someone they trusted. Forest of Death. Iruka sighed from his position in the trees. It had been about 20 minutes since the exam started, and he was already bored. Kami, this is too much like guard duty, thought the scarred Chunin. He hadn't changed much over the years, in appearance at least. News of Naruto's death had hit him extremely hard. It was only thanks to Anko that he'd come out of his funk. His sadness, however, quickly turned to anger, which he had used on missions and in training. He left the academy, refusing to teach children of people who celebrated Naruto's death. He had then become the tutor for the Konohamaru Corps, as well as gotten back into the field. He had run into plenty of Odonin, all of which he killed brutally, earning himself quite a few nicknames. The first being Iruka the Bloody, which Konoha shinobi knew him as. The second was the Spike Ninja, that was known in other countries. He had gained this nickname for nailing Odonin to trees like they were on a cross using chakra spikes. There was only one person to have survived Iruka's wrath, Hatake Kakashi. That, however, was only because he'd been stopped before he could really get started by both Anko and Ibiki, though that didn't stop him for letting the copy nin know just how much of a failure he was as a sensei. He had done this in front of all the other Jonin, Rookie 9, Team Guy, Jiraiya and Tsunade. He had told everything that Naruto had told him about Kakashi. This included what happened in Wave Country and Kakashi's favoritism of Sasuke and him disregarding his other students. He had even explained how he had changed the teams up as a favor for Sandaime, stating that the former Hokage had wanted Kakashi to train his sensei's son. This revelation had gotten everyone in the room, especially when they learned Naruto was supposed to have been under Kurane and Kiba, with Kakashi to offset Sakura's weakness. When Kakashi had tried to speak up saying he had no right to speak like that, Iruka had blown up telling that he had every right. He fed the blonde and kept the roof over the boy's head. It had been him that had bought the rooms that Tenten used to store the weapons. It was him that bought the rooms both Naruto and Tenten lived in. It was him who helped the blonde train his speed. It had been him that kept Naruto from killing both the Uchiha and Sakura when they had first started. He had told them all that as the blonde's elder brother he had every right. That had officially changed everything and everyone. Kakashi had lost a lot of standing within the village. When this news got out, it was also one of the main factors in Tsunade disbanding Team 7. Soon after, Tsunade had called him once more and told him what had really happened to the boy. He had been relieved but still refused to teach the children of such short-minded fools, and that he'd quit and leave the village before he did. A rustling in the tress broke him from his thoughts and snapped him to attention. It was just in time too, as a hail of shuriken and kunai came flying at him. Seeing this, he used his chakra to turn backwards and hung from the tree branch upside down, before dropping down to the next branch. Looking up, he saw the pure white eyes of a Hyuga, and immediately jumped backwards, only to tense feeling a sword in his back. "You've gotten faster, Iruka-sensei," said the male voice from behind him. Iruka smirked hearing this before turning into a log. "And you've gotten taller, Naruto," said Iruka, leaning against a tree trunk. "Of course I couldn't stay short forever," replied the blonde with a smile. "So you're ready to go? We haven't sparred in a while." "I'd love to, sensei, but we want to beat Gaara's record, plus I already have the stars," responded the blonde, while showing the 3 stars he picked up from Iruka. "Still picking pockets, I see," said the Chunin, shaking his head. "Old habits die hard," replied the blonde. "We'll catch up later, all right," said Iruka, getting a nod from the blonde before he disappeared in a puff of smoke. Just then Naruto's clones showed up and handed him 6 more stars before they dispersed. Once that was done, Naruto nodded, and all 3 of them disappeared in puffs of smoke, reappearing in front of the tower. Elsewhere, the Kurosakis walked through the village, taking in their surroundings. Issa noticed dryly that not much had changed since the last time he was here. He did, however, notice the looks they were receiving from the villagers, but wrote it off as it was most likely because they were strangers to these people. As they were walking, they noticed a young brown-haired boy running in their direction. Unfortunately, he was looking behind him and accidentally ran right into Karen, causing both of them to fall. Quickly getting up, the boy helped her up, apologizing while looking around like he was being hunted. That's when they heard it. "Konohamaru-kun!" screamed several voices at once, causing the young boy to pale. "Oh God, no!" whispered the boy. "What was that?" asked Ichigo. "The most horrifying things in the world, fangirls," said the boy with a shudder. "Where's he? Do you see him?" "I think he went that way," screamed out several voices. Konohamaru paled once more before running through a chain of seals and whispering out Ori no Jutsu. Modified. With that, he was engulfed in a cloud of smoke which cleared, showing a young brown-haired girl in his place wearing a blue kimono with shuriken designed on it. This happened just in time as the mob turned the corner and he saw them. "Have you seen Konohamaru-kun?" asked one of the girls, as this was a common form for him. "He went that way," spoke Konohamaru, quickly pointing in the direction of the slums. The girls all squealed hearing this before rushing off in that direction. Once they were gone, the boy dropped the jutsu inside. "Then Kami Naruto ni-san taught me that jutsu before he left," mumbled the boy, though the group all heard him. "What was all that about?" asked Ichigo, sweat drops still on the back of his head. "I'm the grandson of the Sandaime Hokage, and graduated the academy a year early. This was the result," said Konohamaru with a sigh. "I swear I'd rather fight the Shinigami himself than deal with those crazy girls," said the boy. "Anyway, I gotta go. I'm late for a meeting as it is. Sorry again about the folum." "Karen, Kurosaki Karen. Right. I'm Saratobi Konohamaru, by the way. Anyway, maybe I'll see you around sometime." "Maybe," responded Karen. "Konohamaru-kun. Shit, but I with that the boy was gone, making a mad dash to anywhere but there. She's cute, hope I see her again," was his last thought as he sped off. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe and comment down below and turn on the bell notification. And also check out other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.